Good morning. Happy New Year. This is our first live demo of 2022, and happy to see all you jewelry makers. Happy to be back in the shop and making parts again, and hopefully inspiring all of you guys. Whoops, there's Happy New Year. There's that live stream coming in loud. We're happy to be here, and we hope you are too. So far, the New Year's treating us fairly gently, you know. I keep wanting to complain that it's cold, but there is such a cold snap happening in other parts of the country, over in the east and north of us, of course. But I can't complain a bit. The worst I can say is that it's brisk and refreshing here. So I hope that all of you that are further northeast of us are staying warm, because sounds a little scary. I have what I think is a really fun demo. I love this design. It's our Starry Night Bracelet. It is a downloadable design on our website in the inspiration section. The excuse me, the link is in the definition, the description. But I'm also going to post it here. I see a few people popping in. Hi, Gita. Happy evening to you. She's in Denmark. Hi, Nancy from Pennsylvania. Angela, Happy New Year to you too. And Tina, and let's see who else is here. Janine, Lisa, hello to all of you. We are very, very happy to see you. So what I was starting to go on about is that this kit is indeed one of the designs that's available as a kit. Now, if you're a retail shopper, to find this, you'd want to just Google, well, look at your favorite places, of course. And then if they don't carry it, then just do a web search for TierraCast Starry Night Bracelet. Should bring up some retail sources for you. I believe it's selling well. It's a popular design. And it might look familiar to you because it is the same technique that we used for our Monstera bracelet during our renewal launch. So, and that has also been an extremely popular kit. It's a knotted cord technique. This one did so well that we thought, you know, we're just going to, I have a cart over here that's got other supplies on it. Maybe I should just move it closer. Might make things easier. Yeah, the technique is easy. It's kind of adaptable to different materials, which we will talk a little bit about towards the end. When we did do a live demonstration for the Monstera bracelet, you know, earlier in 2021, and we did show some other options, different types of cords and knotting materials. So let's get going. It's a soothing, it's a meditative type of technique. So that's always good, right? So hopefully sound and lighting and everything is good. If it's not, you guys, please mention it in the comments. I don't see everything that floats by in the comments, but I do my best to keep an eye and respond when I can. So, so we've talked about how this is a kit that you can purchase. It's also a downloadable project sheet, which allows, you know, it allows you to make this type of design using other stuff. So you can, there's some versatility. So, but I'm going to stick with the original materials from the kit. I'm not opening up a kit, I just pulled the loose components. So we've got one of our starburst buttons, and I'm going to throw a link in the comments that takes you to our buttons. We have a lot of awesome buttons. And I'm also, what the heck, I'll just throw in all the links now. Here's a link to our buttons, a link to our components that have crystals that are pre-glued with European crystals. So that's also where you can find these starburst buttons. And as well as all of the other components we have. We have a pretty wide selection of crystallized components. And there's also a link here for the Celestial Collection. So you can see what came out with that group of parts. So we've also, speaking of components we have with crystals, one of them is our raindrop frame, and it has, is pre-glued with a clear raindrop crystal that I just love this part. There's also another one that's a flame shape. So it's, would also look nice on this bracelet. It's a little bit of a, I should have grabbed one. It's, I don't know. You'll have to look at follow the link and you'll see the flame crystal drop. It's also quite nice. We've got some nugget spacers, some 5mm nugget spacers. Now our spacers, did I already post a link for those? I don't remember now. Throw all the links in there and then forget what I gave you and what I didn't. This is one of our spacers that's kind of a regular-ish hole size. You know, hole sizes vary all over the place. But for this particular component, this particular spacer bead, it's about 1 millimeter, maybe a little bigger. We also have these spacers with large holes, so they'll fit larger stringing materials. This one works just great for this particular cord. And this is a 0.5 millimeter nylon cord. And I need 40 inches of that, which let's go ahead and cut that while we're talking about it. Of course, you want to adjust the length of your cord depending on 24, 36, depending on how big you want your bracelet. And also thicker cords, there's knots involved here, right? So the thicker cords, those knots are going to take up more of it. So you want to just be generous with yourself. Depending on your cord, you might want to cut more than even what's listed on there, because you're knotting and you just want to make sure that you have enough to work with and you don't sabotage yourself. Don't sabotage yourself. I do that a lot. And I plugged the spacer bead link in there and then I didn't hit enter. So there you go. There's a spacer bead link. And you can see all of the different spacer beads we have that, you know, you can modify this idea with. And now I'm kind of pulling on my cord. I'm pre-stretching it a little bit. In theory, it's a nylon cord, shouldn't really stretch that much, but I just find with cords that it's a good practice because some cords stretch more than others. Geet, my cursor was kind of stuck over your name and on the Facebook feed, and it informs us that your work anniversary was 5 days ago. So happy anniversary. Isn't Facebook weird? But you know what? Happy anniversary. Why not? All right. So I've got I cut about 48 inches, just giving myself extra so that I don't struggle with my knots. With this particular bead and cord, the beads we're using are an 8 millimeter check glass bead. The color, this particular color, because people often like to know, is called luster green crystal. And it's an 8 millimeter fire polish check glass bead. You can see that info also if you go to the project page, because people seem to really like this color. So that color is noted on that inspiration page. I need 11 of those, and each space there with the pattern, you're going to end up with a check glass bead and a spacer and 2 knots. And each one of those sequences takes up about 1/2 inch. So you can adjust your length with that information, you know, as is with 11 beads and 12 spacers. Is that right? Yeah, that's the correct numbers. That's going to make me about a 7.5 inch bracelet. So you could, with that information, that each knot, crystal bead or check glass bead and knot and spacer and knot, that's about a 1/2 inch. You can adjust your length accordingly. Let's see. The first thing I need to do here. Did I talk about all the stuff? Oh, the last thing we need is some size 8 seed beads that make the button loop. That's the very last step of the design. We also need some glue, because some glue there on that knot is crucial, because you don't want that knot coming up apart. I'm going to use some sharp nose tweezers for my knotting. Actually, these ones aren't my favorite. They're super sharp. I have another pair I'm going to use. Hold on. These ones are also sharp nose, but not, these ones are like a little needle. And I just find those, I find these ones that are just not quite so sharp a little bit easier. You know, people do pearl knotting and bead knotting differently. There are certain tools you can use. I'm going to demonstrate this technique that just uses the tweezers. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the ends of my cord and fold it in half. So I'm just lining up my ends. Certainly doesn't have to be perfect, because we can trim it later. And so now I've got it folded in half, and I'm going to use that fold to tuck through the shank of the button, and then tuck those cords through to form a lark's head knot. And that's how we attach the button for this design. And then I'm going to move some of this stuff out of the way so it's not creating clutter. And we're trying to see what we're doing here. And I was going to set my little page of instructions aside, but I might need them, because I've made this a few times, but you know, I forget. Hello, Landa, and hello, Rosalinda. Nice to see you guys. All right, so I've got my, my button attached with my lark's head knot, and then I'm going to come in here right next to the shank, and I'm going to put in my first knot. So I've started my knot, got my big, it's just an overhand knot. I'm going to reach inside that loop with my tweezers and grab a hold of the cords right there at the shank. And then I'm going to pull the cords tight, that I'm still gripping the cords with the tip of my tweezers. Pull it tight right around the tip of the tweezers, and then I can pull those out and use the ends of my tweezers to kind of snug that knot up to the shank. And that's our connection with the for the button. And then the next thing I'm going to do is take one of my spacers and thread that onto both ends of the cord. Depending on the cord you're using, there are little tricks you can use for, you know, sometimes some cords will fray. This particular nylon cord, it's like a C-lon, but it's made by Beadalon. That's what is included in the kit, and is also what I'm using for the demonstration. You can use C-lon, you can use S-lon, and depending on, and cotton cords, hemp cords, leather cord, depending on what you're using. If you end up with a fraying problem, hold on, stepped away. Ideally, I would have a little bit of brush on super glue. But if you ended up with a cord that has that frays and makes it hard to string, what I would do is just put a tiny bit of super glue, and a brush on would be better. I just didn't happen to have one handy. And then just put that on the end of your cord and give it a little twist, and it just kind of secures the loose ends and will keep it from fraying so much. Hello, Lena. We were just talking about the weather. I hope you're staying warm. Lena's in Canada, and it's cold there. All right, so I got my spacer, my first spacer on, and I'm going to tie a second knot right after the spacer. And again, I make the loop. I start my overhand loop, and I grasp the, I snug everything up tight. That is that is kind of important with this design because how tight everything is will affect what happened? The length, the overall length. So if you end up with your everything loose, then your bracelet's going to be longer, right? So I'm making an effort. I'm going to make an effort to make all my knots nice and snug. So made my loop, tucked my tweezers in there, tightened the knot, and then pulled my tweezers out. And here's where we start putting on, oops, lost one of my beads. So the pattern is a spacer, knot, spacer, knot, check glass, knot, spacer, knot, check glass. And with each check glass bead I put on, I'm only stringing it onto one of the cords so that the second cord kind of wraps around the outside. And as I go, I'm going to make an effort to kind of to alternate those. So it's an inexact thing because the cords, as you knot them, they just kind of twist. But I just do my best to alternate them, and that also helps to keep your cord even. If you were to string the cord, the check glass bead onto the same cord each time, eventually you'd end up with one end shorter than the other because of the, one side would be wrapping around the other, the bead, and the other wouldn't. So I've got my bead strung, got my overhand knot started. I'm grabbing the cords right at the end of the bead and pulling that tight. Speaking of bead-along, they have a cool little knotting tool, and I have one, but I've never gotten the hang of it. I've not worked with it enough to know what the heck I'm doing. So now I'm just going to keep going. I've got my second spacer bead. And just getting a little wrapped around the bead, then spacer bead, but I just have to untangle. You refused to go out today because of the cold, Lena? I believe it. Good morning, Linda. All right, so here's where we're going to add the second check glass bead. And because now I want the cord to wrap around the outside on this side, alternating with the other one, I'm going to thread the bead onto this cord. And in a perfect world, I would have set this whole demo up with a step out. I would have had demonstrated this a few times and then been able to move on to one that was close to the end so we could complete it. But I didn't do that. So it's just going to be a slow little demo, and you guys will just have to find subjects to talk about. And as I said, this particular technique is kind of relaxing, or can be once you get the rhythm going. And it actually goes, once you kind of get your rhythm going, it goes, it doesn't go too slowly. You can pick up speed. And so now you can see I got the first check glass, the cords wrapping around the one side, and the second check glass wrapping around the other. And that's I'll continue with that, that pattern. And this is our third bead. We got, what, 8 more to go? And Tina says she doesn't mind watching someone knotting. It can be just kind of, I don't know, repetitive. And you will notice if you, as I was saying about wrapping one cord on the outside. If you keep using the same end of cord over and over for that, you're going to end up shorter. So you can kind of keep an eye out on that as you're knotting. As you're getting ready to string on the spacer bead, you want both ends, right? So you'll start to notice if one's shorter than the other. And if it gets confusing knowing which strand to string the check bead on, just go for when you get the go for the strand that's just wrapped around. That's the one you're going to string the next one on, if that makes sense. And did I just do it backwards there? That's a do as I say and not as I do moment. So, but it's a good time to demonstrate. There's the cord wrapping around the outside. That's the one I want to string the next bead on. Lisa, yeah, this is a good technique. It works for me. As I was saying, there are some tools out there, little knotting tools. There's this wonderful board called a Knotty Do-It-All board, and that's for more like when you're really doing a lot of knotting, like with macrame projects. But oh my God, it's fun. It holds everything in place and lets you get your knots right where you need them. It's beautiful. And then Beadalon has that little knotting tool that's really handy. I just find the tweezers easy. Someone is asking, how do you buy a kit? Jennifer, we are a wholesale manufacturer. We produce the kit. We do not sell them retail. We sell them to retail bead stores. So what you would want to do is do a web search for TierraCast, and you want to be sure and include our name in the search. TierraCast Starry Night Bracelet Kit, and that should bring up plenty of retail sources for you, and that way you can see the price. I want to say it retails for probably under $20, but I'm kind of guessing. So you'll have to do some shopping and look, and hopefully, I think it's a pretty affordable kit. You know, we try to keep our kits so they're not hugely expensive. So it should be under 20 bucks. And if you find a good source, hi, Chris. If you find a good source, Jennifer, feel free to plop that. If you're going to shop while you're watching here, feel free to plop that link in to the comments. Who was Lisa? You were saying you've always had trouble getting tight knots. I find this little movement here too helpful. When I get that knot tied, I use the sides of the tweezers to just kind of shove it down. And Tina uses the Beadalon knotter and says she gets her cords twisted. I really do just need to practice with that. Oh, what did I just do? Got my cords wrapped around the beads. So something I notice in the jewelry making world when the new year starts is that a lot of people do, a lot of the designers that teach and have groups on Facebook where they're, doing challenges and stuff. And there seems to be a lot of them happening right now. And I'm wondering who's doing challenges, who's doing jewelry making challenges for the new year. Let me know what you're doing. And if you're keeping up, I know that Neelay Patel, who is, he makes silver silk. If you guys are familiar with silver silk, it's kind of a wire chain that's really fun for jewelry making. I think he's doing a beading challenge in his group, jewelry making challenge. I thought about trying to put together something like that for our Facebook Lives, but this is not a good time of the year for us to do it. We always have a product launch coming out. So you can see right here, quick change of subject, is that I've got a little loose cord in this knot. You want to watch for that. Make sure that you're pulling your cords as tight as you can to keep your knots nice and snug. Watch out for those loose cords. What was I saying before I went off on that track? Oh, we usually almost always kick off a new year with a new product launch. So that's your hint to be watching for new product from us at the end of this month. We spent the last quarter of last year really working on a new line, and we're pretty excited about it. You guys are hearing it here first. We got some new stuff coming out. I think our launch date is January 31st. Oh, there you go, Jennifer. Thank you. She found a couple of retail sources for the kit, and it is indeed, I think, pretty affordable. And boy, are jewelry kits hot. We noticed, how popular jewelry making kits were becoming during our quarantine. And so we thought, we just need to try and start making more kits. Our production is geared towards making parts, not kits. So, but we're getting better at it. It's starting to get a little smoother, and we're starting to get a little more facile. And we've been trying to do a few new kits with each product launch. So that's been good. It's been good to stretch our production muscles like that and try to have these kits out there for people to use, because it just makes it easier for you guys. Yes, new products, Angela. That's all I'm going to say, though. I'm not going to give you guys any more hints. So I was talking earlier, I demonstrated how to put a little glue on the end of your cord. And I was talking about it in terms of fraying, but it also just helps to kind of stiffen the end of the cord, which makes the stringing a little bit easier. So even if your cord isn't the type that's going to fray, that helps. Putting a little glue on them helps. I'm noticing it because I demonstrated it and put a little bit of glue on one end, but not the other. So I'm noticing that one end is just kind of floppy and not stringing quite as efficiently as the other. But I'm not going to stop to fix that because we're making good progress. I might stop to fix that when we get to the button loop construction, because that we're going to be stringing on seed beads. And because they're smaller, it might make it a little easier if I've got the ends treated. So you can see, I don't know if you can see, I can see. The one that's got glue on it, it just goes right through, and the other one's like, no, not going to be so cooperative. It's coming along. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 3 more. Oops, got a little wrapped there. I started to talk about design challenges. and how I thought it would be fun to come up with something. And I'll think about that. I am going to go ahead and put some glue on that second end because it's starting to feel like it's getting softer and softer the more I work with it. So let's just save myself some frustration. And I'll even put a little more on the first one. So this time, and that's when I started going on about the upcoming product launch. The point of that being that the first month of the year is just really busy for us because we're getting ready for that. And also, typically in normal times, we would be going to Tucson at the end of the month to do a customer event and to see shows and visit with fellow jewelry making vendors and community. We didn't go at all last year. This year, our sales rep is going. She is participating in a wholesale show down there. Unless things go so crazy with COVID, that is the plan. So she is going down to participate in this wholesale show. And this knot got a little funky. Let me see if I can back it out a little bit. So there's a lot of production that goes with that. There's getting projects ready. There's just getting everything ready that she needs to do this. What did I do? Well, maybe one of my cords didn't go through the bead. Anyway, the point being, getting ready for that. She's getting ready for the show. I'm not going, but I do a whole lot of work to help her get prepared for it. And so, we're just kind of got too much other stuff on the plate to try and come up with a social media event like that. But I'm going to keep it on my radar because I think that would be fun to do sometime. Some kind of beading challenge. Nobody's piping in about that, so no one's participating in any challenges right now. I think it could be very fun. I think that the project sheet that I created, the downloadable, this, for the 7.5-inch bracelet, I think I listed 40 inches of cord. I think that I'm going to change that and just maybe change it to 48 inches so that people end up with plenty to work with. So if you run short of cord, if your knots aren't quite as tight, you just run short, that can be really frustrating when it comes to making the button loop. So if you are downloading the project at this time, just make a note. Cut yourself at least 48 inches for a 7.5-inch bracelet and ignore the 40 that I put on there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. One more. You can see that with the knots in the cord, there is a little bit of give in the stretchiness of the bracelet. So for myself, my wrist is kind of small. I could stop right here probably and make my button loop. It would be a close fitting bracelet, but could be done. The point being there, just, adjust this to the size that you need. Tina says she's not doing any challenges. She's just trying to string some beads. Good for you. That's enough of a goal, I think. I'm not a big fan of resolutions. I'm like, no. No. I prefer resolutions. I prefer, I think, intentions, just healthy intentions. So I've got my last check bead on there. String in my last spacer. Last knot. There we go. So now what you want to do is, if you haven't already put some glue on your cord ends, it would be very helpful at this point, because now we're stringing on little size 8 seed beads. And there can be some size variation in your seed beads. So if you're buying the ones from the kit, it should be pretty consistent. It says you're going to need about 18. If you're using some from your stash, there can be a little variation. You might need more or less. The goal here is just to make a loop big enough to fit over the button. So I'm going to start with maybe 16 of these and see how that does. And they should string on. Now, they should string on this cord pretty easily. Also, hole sizes vary with your seed beads. So these particular ones are Tohos. They're color lined. They're fitting pretty easily onto this 0.5 millimeter nylon cord, or were until that one. If you download the project sheet and want to use other materials for your buttons, or for your button loop rather, you just want to watch your hole size. Make sure that whatever you choose is going to fit on your cord, on both strands of the cord, if you're using a different cord. The first couple went on just easily, and now it's like fumble, fumble, fumble. How many do we have so far? 4, 6, 7, 8. Oops. 9. I love the idea of, fire polished check glass beads just come in amazing colors. So you could really completely vary the palette of this. The check glass beads come in an amazing array of colors and finishes, and so do the seed beads. So you just go crazy. Just come on now. Okay, 5, 10, 14. I think we're going to need a couple more. Okay, this is 16. If I wrap that around, that feels a little bit small still. Where's my button? It's at the other end, as it should be. I think maybe one more. All right. So got our seed beads on for our button loop. So the next step here is I'm going to bring this back the cords, make a loop by coming back to that knot that I made there. And I'm going to start another knot right there. And this gets a little tricky, but you just gotta keep at it. What I want to do is I want to tie this knot kind of so it's underneath the first one. And that's because I don't want the knot to slide. It's a little bit tricky to get it right where I want it. But again, if I make my loop and then come in with the tweezers and grab it underneath the first knot, I should be able to tighten it up right there. And I also want to make sure that okay, hold on here. I want to make sure that my seed beads are all adjusted so that there's no slack. And I'm getting there. I want it underneath that first knot, so I'm going to come back in with the tweezers and make sure that that's happening. Tighten it. Come on now. And really, really tighten this one down. Really, really make sure it's a nice secure knot. And then before I trim it, I'm going to come in here with some super glue. Because I don't want that knot coming up loose at all, because you'd lose all your seed beads, and then by then your tails will be trimmed and you won't be able to fix it, and that would just be a disaster. So I'll let that dry a little bit before I trim. It's these particular beads, 17 worked nice to make a nice size button loop. And the next thing we want to do is I have one of our 5mm round jump rings, and our jump rings, we list them with the inside dimension as the size. So the inside diameter of this particular jump ring, it's a 16 gauge jump ring, nice and sturdy. And the inside diameter is 5mm. The outside is about like 6.5, maybe. So I just took that little jump ring and I attached it right after that first spacer at this end of the bracelet. And then I'm going to trim this. Something fun you could do is, if your cord ends were long enough, is if you could string, if you have remaining seed beads, you could string those on there and make a little dangle with some seed beads here. Maybe I'll go ahead and do that just for the fun of it. String it all the way down there and then just tie a knot, choose my length, whatever I wanted it to be, you know. Whoops. Could be long or short. We would want to make sure that however big your knot is, it is big enough to hold your bead on. So yeah, it's just an option. You could decorate the tails, or you can just cut them off, whatever works for you. All right, so that is the original version of, well, no, not the original version, the second version of the bracelets we have in this style, the Starry Night. Like I mentioned before, we had the very first one was our Monstera bracelet. Same technique, Also, we used some fire polished check glass beads, and we used, this came out with our renewal launch, which was at the beginning of the 2021. And and this pretty Monstera bracelet was part of that launch. So this bracelet, that's where that came from. And it's just such a nice technique. And Cindy, yes, that little knotty technique right there at the end of the button loop, it is the fussiest part of this bracelet. So like you said, yeah, replay. And I hope that the demonstration is okay for you. So other variations. When I did a live demo with the Monstera, I also worked up, I wanted to use some other types of beads and some other types of cords. So I did a few different things. I used some little pearls with some, this is a similar cord to the nylon cord that I used, but it's a little bit softer. It's called, let me look. Oh, I can find that information for you guys. Give me a second. It's a Toho. It's a Toho cord. And I think that I actually listed that on the, actually, I'm not gonna try to hunt it down for you guys. I'm gonna tell you to just go to the Monstera bracelet inspiration page on our website. I'll put that in there for you. Bracelet. Okay, I hope that's the right link. I listed for these different variations, there's a picture included on the inspiration page where I listed the other materials that I used. So someone specifically asked about using this technique with leather cord, and I did do that. This was looks like a 1.5 millimeter leather cord, and I used one of our large hole beads and love the way this one came out. It's quite a bit stiffer than you would get with a nylon cord, but you could also use a thinner leather cord, but I thought this one came out really fun. Love the way those big large hole beads alternate. And then this one, I used a cotton cord. I think it's probably a 1.5 millimeter. Oh, something to go back to the leather one. So obviously I didn't use beads to make a button loop. I just knotted the cords to make the button loop because some spacer beads large enough to string onto the leather cord would make that a big chunky button loop. I didn't really want that. And so when I did this one, I also skipped the beads on the button loop. I just brought the cords around and tied them in a knot. And these are just some pretty quartz beads, and I liked the idea of using those with a very colorful cord because you could kind of see the color through the cord. So just wanted to show you guys these because there is so much potential with this particular design and technique. You could really have a great time with whatever you've got in your stash. If you've got large hole beads, you could play with the bigger cords. If you've got smaller beads, get yourself some Ceylon or Eslon or this Toho Amiot. I think it's Amiot, guys, but I'm not sure. But again, if you go to the Monstera bracelet inspiration page, you will find that information. See what I used there. So that's it, you guys. Let me switch my camera back. I don't think I had anything else I wanted to make sure I mentioned. Sometimes I have grand intentions to, pass along information I have or tips, this and that, and then I forget all about them by the time I'm done with the demo. I've forgotten. Try to make notes, do my best. So, so thank you guys for watching. I hope you make one of these. It's what I particularly loved about the Starry Night one for this demo is it just feels timely. It's winter, the nights are long, a little sparkle is fun on those dark nights. So I thought it was a good one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I will see you at my next demo. Hopefully, I'll get something put together for next week. And if not, I will see you soon. And thank you. And be well and hope you make lots of great stuff this week. And we'll see you soon. Bye.